r/AskReddit. What is the creepiest thing you've seen in the woods, or in the mountains, or in deserts, or caves, or in small towns, or in remote or rural areas, or while on large bodies of water, or while on an aircraft or a nautical vessel? This took place in the Australian bush around 10/11 at night. I was 17, leading a staggered column of about 60 cadets to our detachment campsite. Due to light discipline rules, only myself at the very front of the group and the other flight commander at the rear had torches on. This was so that any vehicles coming along the trail could see us, and so that most of the cadets could maintain their night vision. We were camouflaged up and thus difficult to see at night. As we walked along, I periodically looked to my sides, and kept seeing what looked like dewdrops on the ground, almost like tiny blue gems glinting in my torchlight either side of the road. I had to maintain my position in the formation, so I couldn't get a good look at what they were. However, after a while we stopped for a very brief break, and I took the opportunity to have a closer look. Walking over to the side of the trail, I spotted a small cluster of the diamonds and focused my head torch on them. Rather than seeing diamonds or dewdrops or anything remotely pleasant, I instead saw a group of about 5 large spiders just crouching in the leaf litter and staring at me. They looked like huntsmen's, which were about the size of an adult's hand. Sweeping my head around, I realized there were thousands of the things, all over the ground, some on the trunks of trees, and everywhere around me, glaring at the light affixed to my head. I had a very brisk walk back to the formation and attempted to play it cool while screaming in my head. Being a massive arachnophobe, I have no ducking clue how I managed to set up a tent and spend the next week in that cursed forest. As someone from a foreign army who will be coming over to Australia later this year for 3-week training exercise outfield, I really regret reading this. I'd been at football training with a few of my cousins when I was about 10 years old. We decided to take a walk before our parents picked us up, so we went along the canal towpath. My cousin looked down in the canal and saw a really nice jacket floating along, and being a weird scavenger person, decided to reach in to fish it out. Well, the jacket turned over, and so did the man wearing it. He also had no face left. Not gonna lie, that was rough. I was a cook on board several NOAA research ships. Up in the Bering Sea, I saw what appeared to be a massive black triangular-shaped craft dive under the water. I viewed it from a distance of maybe 2 nautical miles. I was Boy Scout camping with my group of older buddies and an adult leader in Yellowstone. We had been backpacking for 2 days and stopped in a beautiful little clearing at the bottom of some huge tree-covered hills. The sun started to set, we made a fire, and I began to climb up into the trees to dig a hole and fill it back up. You know what I mean. As I squat there, basking in moonlight and appreciating the glow of fire among the trees, I looked up to a ridgeline a few hundred yards away where the moon was rising, and I shit you not, I saw a damn big cougar crest the hill and just watch our fire. It was likely no danger to me, but seeing that outline, that unmistakable shoulder crawl they do, was haunting. I watched it sit there for a good 15 minutes until I was called back by my worried buds. I pointed the cat out to them when I got done because it was still just watching us. Crazy. Walking on the beach with my boyfriend, and we had walked to a giant rocky cliff to make out. Somebody was just gazing at the ocean, crying and shaking. Mind you, this is late at night, like around 9:30 p.m. We asked him if he was okay. He apologized and practically ran back down the cliff, away from the dangerous areas. My boyfriend and I watched him until he reached the public area and decided to call it a night. I am pretty sure he was going to jump. I was hiking in northern Quebec doing some exploration work for geologists. The thing about northern Quebec is that it has forests, mountains, hills. Pretty much all green, black and gray. Except that in the middle of a forest we hiked through, we found this strange all-yellow patch of grass in a perfect circle, about the diameter of a medium-sized house. It was almost perfectly flat too. Caught us off guard. My friend and I were chilling in the woods one day back in high school and see a dog walking by, later followed by this kid. He looked troubled, so we asked if he needed help. He obliged, telling us he was dog sitting for his friend and the dog got loose. So we spent a good hour following this dog and kid around, going deeper and deeper into the woods. Eventually I finally got the dog to come to me, but it wasn't wearing a collar, so I wasn't able to get a hold. My friend and I look away for just a few seconds to discuss strategy. And when we turn back around, the boy and the dog are both gone. It was like they completely vanished. Keep in mind it was autumn, so any footsteps could be heard from quite afar. But it was just silent. Not a single trace of them anywhere. Still don't really know what happened. Maybe they ran away real quick. Who knows? Was definitely enough to creep us out though. It's 2 a.m. We're in a tent in the woods in Maine. I'm about 8. Mom, there's something creeping around outside the tent. MMMPH, you're dreaming, go back to bed. Mom, there really is something out there. No, there isn't. Just then, something whaps on the side of the tent, hard enough to shake the whole thing. And my mother, who is entirely too goddamn tired to deal with this shit, sits bolt upright and whaps right back in the same spot. And from outside the tent, we hear, meow. Edit, it was a house cat. We didn't hear anything more the rest of the night. When I was about 7 or 8, my parents sent me to a local summer camp that they would pick me up from in the afternoons. I never really liked it because the kids were mean. Everything was either broken or not clean, and the counselors obviously didn't care. I remember the girls' changing room had a door that led out to the woods, but the doorknob was gone, so it was unlocked all the time and you could see into it. This was primarily where the girls changed into their bathing suits, and there was usually someone blocking the view while we changed so the boys couldn't look in. Well, one day I'm changing alone and someone wasn't blocking the door. I look over and see an eye peeping in through the hole watching me change. I pull the rest of my clothes back on quickly and run out to tell my twin brother. I tell my dad that I don't want to go back to that camp anymore, and he begrudgingly takes us out of the camp pretty soon after because he knew how much he hated it. Years later, the camp has been closed down for many years, and I'm asking my dad about it. He gets really grim and tells me it shut down because a 13-year-old boy had raped a 7-year-old girl in the woods right behind the girls' bathroom a few weeks after I had told him about someone watching me change. In order to get back home from a popular kebab restaurant, I need to walk a short path through the woods. Along the way there is an extremely old, abandoned, partially collapsed chapel, and occasionally I'll stand there for a few seconds admiring it. It's quite beautiful in its own way. One day during winter season, one decided to rest there for a minute, so I placed my kebab on the bench right next to the chapel and just stood there taking in the scenery. It was already rather dark and the woods were almost completely silent, but right as I was about to continue my walk, I heard footsteps rapidly getting louder. It was a child running towards me, and as soon as it realized I was there, it started to repeatedly scream, "Run, he is coming," or variations of that same sentiment. I was a bit perplexed by the situation, so I watched the child run past me without moving an inch myself. It didn't take another second for a much more weighty pair of footsteps to appear. I could make out a silhouette in the distance which seemed to be their origin, and at that exact point in time I got really scared. As opposed to running, I decided to hide in the chapel next to the altar, and after tripping over an old broken chapel bench I reached my hiding place. The footsteps got louder and louder, but right as they approached the vicinity of the chapel they suddenly went silent. About 15 seconds of complete quietness had passed just for the words, "Oi, you ducking idiot," left your kebab on the bench to break the silence. Turns out it was a resident of the very same street I inhabit. His nephew was visiting and he wanted to race him to the kebab stand. I don't know whether this was the right place to post this. Ultimately, this is more stupid than creepy. in Auburn, Alabama in 2008. It was Halloween and we Googled haunted houses. I can't remember what the website was like or if there even was one, but it was like 45 minutes away. I know that it wasn't like a big attraction and we figured it was on someone's land and would be like a local deal. We drove out there at like 10 p.m. This was before iPhones and GPS, so we had MapQuest directions. We ended up going down a pretty country road for a while with no street lights. Then turned down a legit dirt road that went through the woods. Pitch black. Went down it for like 10 minutes and finally saw an old house with a sign by the driveway that was handwritten and said, "Haunted House." No other cars or lights or people anywhere. We pulled in the driveway and sat there for a second like, alright, this is ducked up, we should leave. All of the sudden an old pickup truck turned on about 15 feet in front of us, facing us, lights shining right in our faces. It started driving towards us down their own driveway. We backed out and peeled out. It followed us, like almost bumping our rear end, right on our tail down this pitch-black dirt road in the middle of the Alabama woods. We were flipping our shit. It was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Hills Have Eyes stuff. He stayed out our tail, blinding us and almost bumping us all the way back home until we got off our exit, then he finally let us go. No idea who was driving. I always think what would have happened if we got out of the car when we were in that driveway. Posted about this before, but back when I was a kid, some friends and I came across people in robes chanting around a campfire out in the woods on the edge of the town we lived in. We were staying at a friend's house for a birthday party, sleepover, and went for a late night walk. This was back in the late 80s during the Satanic Panic. Looking back now, I'm sure it was just some teenagers goofing around, but at the time it scared the living bejesus out of us. One of the girls with us had a panic attack and started hyperventilating. Got pretty serious, but we finally managed to get her calmed down. Felt like running at night last year because the park near where I live gets all pretty with the lights on in the dark. So after 5 minutes into the exercise, I feel the need to adjust my shoes because I forgot to wear a longer sock and they were hurting my ankle. I look up and I see this dark silhouette running towards me at full speed wearing a hoodie about 200 meters away. I was on the left side of the street and he was on the right, so it was clear he was running towards me. I legit almost shitted my pants and felt an adrenaline surge. I thought about fighting him if he got any closer, but in a blink of an eye, the person trips, falls face planted on the ground, and starts crawling in my ducking direction again. Duck that. Dude is committed. I'm leaving. Like and subscribe.